Greg Garza, how the heck are you?
Good morning. How you doing?
Good to see you, my friend. That's when you go and you have that outdoor backdrop right there. That is one of the more picturesque backdrops that we get to see when you and Michael get to come and join us every single time.
It is pretty beautiful here, that's for sure.
Just make sure that you don't take, 2 steps to your right?
Yes.
Everything gets locked in place.
Yeah, 17th floor right now, so yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Let's see. Can you lift the computer without getting in trouble?
Give you
I want to see. Yeah, see, there we go. See how incredibly picturesque that is? Yeah. That is where Greg Garza gets to hang out occasionally.
Pretty beautiful.
Yes. I want to start from what I always ask about at the end. How are things going with Beyond Goals because of high school season and practices getting underway, college now underway, all of that stuff? Where are things with Beyond Goals with you and Cap right now?
Yeah, same old. Continuing helping kids navigate their own journey and even families through college journeys. So many different things within what we do, and sometimes helping kids who are getting involved in football season, other tennis players, other sports, and that's always the beauty behind what we do. Is there's so many values just that can be implemented in other sports as well.
Well, and this is something that I don't think we've ever had the chance to talk about, because you mentioned all of these other sports that come into the fore. When it comes to mentoring, how much of a universality is it with your soccer background and Cap's soccer background, and then having to translate it to other sports? How much commonality is there in the thought and the pursuit and the execution of things?
Yeah, there's so much overlap, right? It's very intertwined and what we talk about, and just trying to ultimately, I always tell parents and kids the things that we're speaking about are not just about sport. They're life skills, they're life hacks for you to use throughout the longevity of your life and your career and whatever you decide to do in the future. And that's what I always tell people is we are not trying to build elite athletes. We are trying to build elite people, because we want them to have an elite personality to be successful and have the tools to be successful in whatever they do.
Have you ever, in your process, discovered a life hack for your mentees that has ended up helping you out, whether it's as a father, as a mentor, as a coach? Have you found a life hack that has helped you out?
Yeah, I think many times. I think we've spoken about before that even as a mentor and somebody who, I always say is an encyclopedia of knowledge within what we did. We continuously learn and are very open-minded to so many kids who are so intelligent, so many intellectual kids who are just, think outside the box, or just even analytical kids who just, are always looking at the bigger picture of things. And for us, those are teachings and lessons for us as well, even as adults. I love diving deep into the way kids think, because they're usually always honest. They're usually always very open when you do gain and build that trust with them, and you're able to really strike some really cool, aspects within their mindset, so you can use for yourself. And I think when we speak to high schools and middle schools, the kids who really grasp everything, and the kids who are really in tune and in sync with everything that we speak about, they come up with some great words or great phrases or great, within our exercises that we choose to do. And within those things, you can use them in your personal life, which is awesome.
How smart is today's mentee? Because I would imagine, obviously, we're dealing with generational disconnects at times when we're trying to figure out conversations and points and learning and growth and all of that. How smart are mentees today? How smart are young men and women today?
So intelligent. Yesterday I mentored a girl from Salt Lake City who is 2015. So that means she is 2 years older than my 7-year-old. So she's 9. I would never imagine my 7-year-old sitting down and having a conversation, but she's 9 years old and was just so intelligent. So much. I think it's not even the intelligence, it's the maturity.
Yeah.
It's the maturity to be able to sit down for 30 minutes and talk to an adult that you don't really know through a computer screen. And that for me is that just, I think in a way it's also teaching these kids the next phase and way of life for them, right? And whatever they do, they're going to be having conversations like this as an adult, within whether they're doing their meetings. I have a call on Monday morning with MLS again, so it's going through the ICA again, and it's a virtual meeting, and I'm speaking to all the new international players that are within the league and have gotten signed to give them the training, and it's through a computer, right? And I mean, obviously the face to face and person to person is so beneficial, but in today's world with so many people, this gives us the benefit to be on the 17th floor in Canada, and still have a strong message and have that connection with people, which is great.
And that's, I find that interesting that today, in today's day and age, with folks as young as 9, in your experience, that you are finding young men and women who are trusting enough to just sit there and sit down with you or with Michael or with whomever, and to just go ahead and say these kinds of things. I find that to be refreshing on one element, and then a bit of a surprise on a second element, just because it's not something I would normally expect from someone so young in this current example.
It's that's the coolest part for me, like I mentioned, is just their maturity, is the maturation process, and obviously helping them to gain maturity, and to gain that go through that maturation process of understanding certain qualities and certain aspects that they can use for a lifetime. I always tell parents the coolest thing for me is not watching them grow up. I could give two craps about them growing up because it's the inevitable.
Yeah.
But watching them mature in different ways is the coolest thing, being a mentor. And surprisingly, seeing how many already mature kids there are at such a young age, who are just so very well spoken and such good listeners. They're good students in school. That's the whole key of this, is to help them understand certain things that will help them along the way within their soccer journey. But you look at whether it be failed prospects or kids who had the opportunity of a lifetime in front of them. One of the main reasons we do mentorship is because a lot of these kids, they grow up and have the opportunity right in the palm of their hands or right at their feet, and they're not able to grab onto it and not let go of it, maybe because of their maturity, maybe because they're not mature yet. So I think that's a huge component of it. That's a huge piece of it. And for us, that's one of the main reasons we love what we do.
Full disclosure, this morning before you came on, the opening kickoff had to do with what's currently going on with the new head coach at Chelsea and what's going on at Manchester United with players and having 9 gazillion players and having to choose what your roster is going to be. And the new head coach at Chelsea basically saying, well, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're making. I don't care what your salary is. You're going to do things my way. You're going to give 100%, Sunday through Thursday, or you ain't going to play, or you ain't going to be around, or both.
Yeah.
When you are talking to mentees, how do you impress upon them the idea of effort, maintaining effort, and making sure that they understand that giving 100% the entire time will benefit them, even if there are temporary roadblocks like not being selected, like you think you're good enough, but for whatever reason you're not a part of things? How do you discuss giving 100%?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you look at, just use the example of Chelsea. You have Raheem Sterling and Ben Chilwell, right? I think they played every single game within preseason, and then they're both not selected on the roster. And I think Enzo Maresca, right? I think he told them after the first game that they weren't rostered, that they're able to seek a new spot or a new journey or wherever they want to be in the future. They're not a part of the plans, and I'm sure there's probably like 20 other players, since they have 40 players in Chelsea right now. but that's part of. I think that's a lesson that you can teach young kids, that as they get older, that even in the corporate world, it's not very romantic, is it? It's not a beautiful journey, and there's going to be times to where you feel like you're doing everything, and you might get fired, you might get laid off, and hopefully the work that you were putting into something will allow you to get that back somewhere else, right? I think I think personal storytelling for them is by far probably the biggest one of the biggest lessons that we can give, and experiences. I use a personal story of mine being in Portugal after sporting and getting to another team, and you know maybe playing. I think out of like 40 games the whole entire season, I think I played 3 games. Was training by myself, not even involved with the club. I mean, I was on the roster to be listed, but never got rostered. Coach did not favor me. I was a 19-year-old kid, and I would train by myself with the fitness coach, and they would do small sided games, and they would do possession drills. Never involved, and I think at the beginning of that season, it was very clear that they had just kind of found a spot for me and thrown me into the fire, where a place to where I wasn't welcome in the first place. So that coach had no favor in me. Didn't matter if I was the first one there every single day. Didn't matter if I was the hardest working player, if I was the last one to leave, in which I was. But I never got a chance. I never got an opportunity. And so in my mind, I kind of just use that as more fuel to my fire, just to work my ass off even more. So you can use that to your benefit. And I think for myself, it was more so of just thinking, okay, I'm preparing myself for what's next. I'm not. This is a write off of where I am right now, but I have to prepare myself mentally, emotionally, and also physically for the next spot. And I just remember in the very beginning, they would make me do fitness on the side, and the fitness. I was training with the fitness coach, and he would have me, do doggies or just run around cones, and he'd be like, "You have to do this in 10 seconds," and I would do it in 7. And over the course of the whole entire year, they'd have me do more things, and I would still, over the course of the year, I was still outbeat or outrun everyone else, or even myself, and kind of be my own biggest competitor throughout that whole entire year. And once again, although that's a roadblock, and although that's a huge upset or a downfall or a plateau or a dip that you hit, for myself, it was more so thinking about how I need to prepare myself for what's next. And that's all I was thinking about. So I think giving that story to kids, I think most kids, and Parky always says it, they see our they see our trajectory, and they think it's always up. They don't realize that we go through moments like that as well, even as professional athletes. But you can still prepare yourself for what's to come, and prepare yourself for that next chapter by still giving it your all. Because if you give up and you let go in that situation, there is not going to be a next chapter. There's not going to be a day of tomorrow. So I think personal storytelling is also a massive component to what we do.
Halftime with Greg Garza here on the Friday Free Kick from our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring at BG Mentoring on the 280 character app. In that situation, how do you keep from banging your head against the wall and sitting there going, "Oh, screw it"?
I think you do bang your head against the wall, but I think you bang your head against the wall at training. You put all that anger and you put all that frustration, that being upset, and you can kind of transform it on the field. I think James Milner gives a great podcast and a great interview about it. I mean, we're talking about a guy who I think has now just broken the record of how many EPL games that have been played. And he's never been a reference, or he's never even been a starter on any team that he's ever played on. Right now he's a reference, because he's playing at Brighton, I believe, right? So it's captain, but I mean, he's been a captain everywhere he's played. But I mean, if you look at Liverpool, if you look at Man City, not somebody who is like the main reference, somebody who's kind of that versatility player, industrial player who comes in as a sub or can play every single position. But I think he gives a great interview and a great podcast just about understanding those moments of giving your absolute best and trying and working harder than everybody else, and then not getting selected in the 18 to the roster. And how do you use that? And I think it's a special mindset that you have to kind of train your brain, that even in those worst of moments, you just have to use and transform that anger in the next week, and the next week, and the next week, and the next week. Because it is so easy. You have, I think he kind of puts it to where you have one of two choices, right? If that's the type of person that you want to be, to just kind of give up and lay your arms down and just be like, all right, I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. Then that's really not going to get you anywhere in life and whatever you do. So I think he gives a great example of just himself And then you speak about, somebody who's had more games than anybody playing in the English Premier League right now, who once again has never been a reference, but always kind of worked his way to still being useful. And I think that's a big piece of it.
That sounds like one of the hardest things in the world to do, is to dust yourself off after every day, knowing that you've given your best, and you don't know who's paying attention. You don't know if they're paying attention, because you want to be a part of the collective. And they're like, well, no, you're over there. You're over at the kids' table eating lunch, and you're doing all that kind of stuff. It sounds like to dust yourself off every day, to do the same thing over and over again, and anticipate a different result at the end of it at some point. It sounds like one of the hardest things to do.
I think it is, but once again, I think you prepare you're mentally, emotionally, and physically preparing yourself for what's next.
Okay.
Right. That's what you have to think about. And even in my position, whenever I was in that position, that's all I could think about. I wasn't thinking about the day of tomorrow, because I knew the day of tomorrow was going to be the exact same. I was thinking about 6 months from then, or 8 months from then. That was my end goal. That was my goal of just saying, okay, I obviously know this season is a write-off, but I have to prepare myself for next season, because there is going to be another door of opportunity somewhere that I have to walk in and go in and be like, okay, full throttle. I'm absolutely ready for it, because if I just lay my head down right now, and then I'm not going to be prepared for it. I'm not going to be ready for it. So I think a lot of players, this is a big one. It's a hard one to speak with kids, but if you're in a high level team and you're getting zero playing time, hopefully you're working your butt off for the next phase, or for the next club that you'll be at. There will always be a club that's available, but you just have to make sure you're the one that's prepared.
You mentioned how it's difficult to discuss it with the younger athlete. Do they understand it once you put it into context? Is it still a big mountain that they have to kind of understand, and you've got to continue to emphasize and reemphasize the point and its importance? Or do they get it faster because they're more mature these days?
I think you have to always kind of reiterate yourself and give them other personal storytelling moments, other dips and plateaus that you've kind of hit within your career, because I think that's where you build that bond and that connection and kind of build that trust. Once they do trust you, I think they kind of realize, okay, if this guy did it, then I can. I think that's a big one. I think that's a big hurdle for them to really overcome and see, but also understand. And I think that's what ultimately builds that maturity in the first place. I think sometimes they might look at their parents and they might say, okay, this person, my dad, my mom or dad have never been through anything like this.
Yeah.
And which they probably have, but just in a different circumstance. But I see when they see someone that has been in the same situation or the same shoes of them within the same sport, and somebody who has had, the ultimate success story, I think that changes their perspective and kind of gives them a better teaching and lesson on how they can move forward as well.
Okay, so let's talk about a different kind of moving forward. This week at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground, after posting a 2+ minute video on his 280 character app account, Dax McCarty just decided at the end of the season, unless the conversation that he had with Sabalob Janidze can be proven, that if Atlanta United wins MLS Cup, Dax will come back for a 20th season. But Ropes wants to know what your thoughts are on Dax's retirement announcement before the season ends.
Yeah, I think a smart move by him and telling it now. I mean, do I think he could probably play another year? Most definitely. Do I think he could probably play another 2 years? Probably. I mean, it's the same thing as Jeff Larinowitz, right? They're very similar players, both redheads. You have they're both great. Like I said, industrial players that you need on your team to kind of act as a leader, but also plug away any spot that you need to plug away in with an experience. But I think a good call by him making it now and not making it at the end of the season, because I think if you make it at the end of the season, most people are not paying attention. They're focusing on the next season. So I think it shines a little bit more light on him to do it now, just to kind of have that respect and, kind of that repertoire that he obviously has as a player. And even as a person, he's done so much for the league. He's been in the league since, people were making $11,000 a year. So that was probably, I would love to see what his first contract was when he was in the league. It was probably $9,000 or $11,000. So per year, guys, and that's something to say. But I mean, just somebody who has really seen the league grow. Those are people that that you probably want working for the league after his career is over. Somebody that you probably want that is building those relationships with people and still heavily involved. And I honestly think he will be. I'm not sure if he has his coaching license or whatever he wants to do, but I think somebody who will be extremely involved in the growth of the league, even after his career is over. I played against Dax the very first time I played against Dax. I don't believe he was even a pro yet. I think I was probably about 13 or 14 years old, and he was on the under 20s. And so, yeah, I was a very young kid, and I remember seeing a little bitty redhead that was probably the size of most of us as 14 and 15 years old, and he was on the under 20s. And he wasn't even the talk of their team. There were other kids that were just absolutely amazing on that team. Sal Zizzo was on that team as well. There was a lot of kids that were just really great players. But I mean, look, he made a staple of himself within the league, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I firmly anticipate that he'll be wearing a blazer and an earpiece probably in the next part of his career. So when Dax was talking about coming into Atlanta this season, it was going to be in a role that was different from what he's used to. He's used to starting. He's used to doing the minutes. He's used to putting in the time. He's used to getting 30-plus matches a year where he's in the starting 11. He was going to come to Atlanta, and the role was going to be a little different. It was going to be, you come in and the manager taps the arm late in the game. You come in out of the bullpen, give me your 20 or 30, shut the door. Give me a spot start every now and then. Coming in the second competitions like Open Cup and all of that kind of stuff. How difficult is it to adjust your mindset and your approach, knowing what we've talked about earlier here in the segment about giving 100%, even if you're off to the side, not knowing if you're going to start? How difficult is it to reorient yourself from someone who's 90, 90, 90, 90, 90 to a couple of zeros, maybe a 60, maybe a 20, maybe a 30? How difficult is that to reorient yourself when you know that your role is going to change?
I think for somebody with his experience and somebody who has been involved in the league and in the game so long, I think he's probably more than used to understanding that there are going to be different roles. I'm sure he even came in with the expectation that somehow, some way, he would find his way playing more minutes and being more involved, rather than coming in with the expectation and thinking that, I'm not going to get much playing time at all. I think for every player, you should always go in with the expectation that you're going to play more than you actually think you are, because that might happen. And I think that, the more experienced you are, the more confidence it allows you to build. It's much better to think that way, in my personal opinion, and I'm sure he probably did. He's been heavily involved with every club that he's ever played for in his whole entire career. I mean, even with Nashville is probably a similar role, but somebody who played a massive piece to kind of their beginning success within their club. So I think that he's probably very satisfied with where he is in his career right now, and although it's coming to an end, but like I said, probably very satisfied with everything that he's been able to conquer.
Okay, I can't let you get out of here without talking about Atlanta United. 9 matches left in the season, and they are in what our buddy Nick Alifi says, they're in a knife fight in a phone booth right now with all of the teams that are chasing after the 8 and the 9. When you look at the run-in as it is, starting in Los Angeles this weekend with MLS After Dark, and it could get a little wacky, that you've got to be on every single time just to get into the playoffs for Atlanta United. I mean, that's a different kind of pressure where you're talking pressure for seeding and pressure to get in and to stay in because of everyone that's chasing from behind. What are you looking at from the run-in for the final 9 matches?
Yeah, it's you look at I think ninth right now. Is that the seeding? Is that the
Yeah, right. Yeah, right now they're in ninth, and everyone from like 8th to the bottom is separated.
Is like 3 points away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 3 point separation. The West is a little different, though. You know, it's I think the West is a little bit more spread out, if I'm not mistaken.
They are.
But man, it's every game counts now, right? I think the next 2 games are away.
Mm-hmm.
If you can pull off just any points within those games, I think you still give yourself a chance. I think if you even 2 ties within these next 2 games, I think would be key and clutch to keep dreaming. But I think you have to at least try and get a couple of points from these next 2 games.
Yeah, because you're out in Los Angeles, and then you come home, and then you go to Charlotte for a rivalry game there on the road before another bye week, before you have all the stuff at home, before you're having – I think that the L.A. match is the last match of the Western Conference this year, if I remember my schedule correctly. So you get all the other games that don't matter. They're done after Saturday night. Then the last 8 are all in Eastern Conference. And you've got to try and stay in. You've got folks behind you. You're trying to chase up ahead of you, so you avoid the 8-9. I mean, this sets itself up for having to keep your head on a swivel for 360 degrees for the final month plus of the season. I mean, you're gonna have to be like on every single day.
You have to. This is when it matters most, and it doesn't really matter how you play. It doesn't really matter what style that you play. I think even with so many changes and so many things that have changed with around Atlanta United, it doesn't really matter what type of soccer that you play as long as you're able to kind of pull off some results.
What he said. Greg, as always, my friend, even when you're up there in the T-Dot and the Golden Horseshoe, you get to hang out with us from the 17th floor. It's always great to catch up with you, my friend, and find out what's going on at Beyond Goals Mentoring. I know that business is going to pick up with a lot of different things with college and high school and the other sports that you're talking about. It's very, very cool to see what you and Cap are doing on a weekly basis. Thanks for hanging out, my friend. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your coffee with us. Get out of here.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Take care.
All right. Be good. Greg Garza from Toronto.